Hello, everyone. Let's get rolling here. The cafe is open for business. I'm Eric Hörst with coffee, and I hope you are too. We meet here every other Monday at noon Eastern. Today, a minute or two after. Sorry about that. And we talk training for climbing. Each episode of the cafe, I have a main topic, which I talk about for a few minutes, and then I answer some of your questions. And all the while, hopefully we sip some coffee together. So let's begin with coffee. Climbers around the world unite. We commune over coffee because what's better than training, climbing, and coffee? This episode, before we get to the main topic, as often, I like to give a shout out. So today's shout out is to my older son, Cameron, who turns 21 today. So that's a big milestone. And, it's hard to believe it's been 21 years since he arrived here. Our first of two sons. And so I'm grateful to have two boys that are pretty good kids, pretty good climbers. Hopefully the best is yet to come, I guess I would like to say. Cameron did his first 515A this season. And so it's hard to eke out improvements once you get into those higher grades. But if he stays focused and motivated, as I often talk about, training smarter each year, you just can't do the same thing year over year and expect to get better. It doesn't work that way. And actually that kind of leads me to our topic for today is what is the one thing that you can do that we all must do? It's a character trait really that ensures we will continue to improve season over season. And, when you get to be an older climber like me, it's tough to improve physically because, we're kind of genetically set that our body slows down. Our testosterone levels drop. I mean, there's a multitude of changes as you go through your 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s that despite smart training, it becomes a losing battle, and I'm kind of fighting that battle and, in some ways hanging on, in other ways maybe losing it a little bit each year. The aches and pains are more common and the recovery is slower. And hopefully I'm not depressing you because most of you are likely way younger than me and still getting stronger and stronger each and every season. And that's a great thing. But, what is also neat is that climbing, because it's such a complex activity, it's very, very technical. It's a skill sport. It's very mental. And those mental and technical skills you can continue to improve upon decade after decade after decade and make up for in many ways what you're maybe not gaining anymore physically. Like when you begin to hit that genetic ceiling physically, you can only get so strong. Not all of us can train to the point of being able to do 10 one-arm pull-ups or hold a front lever for 30 seconds like Drew Ruana. Or to be able to pull on, 6mm edges and do one-arm pull-ups like a few of the best climbers in the world can. We're not all genetically able to get there, but still we can climb at a very high level by, training in proper ways year over year, and always, keeping an open mind to improving technical and mental skills. And so, for me, a climber of 45 years, I did my hardest climb ever last year. And in my mind, I'd like to think I can take it up a notch, this year or next year, because I'm able to together mentally, technically, and physically, that aggregate can be a greater value than it has been in past years, even though the physical number might be fading a little bit. So in any case, that one big thing that is essential is to maintain a beginner's mindset and all that comes with the beginner's mindset. what I'm talking about is, when you're a beginner, you think back. It's, for me, it was a long time ago, but I can still remember those first couple of seasons as a climber where everything was new. Every area I traveled to was new. Learning the gear, learning the knots. It was all new and exciting, and I could hardly wait to get to the crag. There was no climbing gyms back when I learned to climb in 1977. So it was about getting outside, and just the drive to get to the rocks seems like it took forever because I was young and enthusiastic and just couldn't wait to get on the rock. So that intense enthusiasm and curiosity, wanting to experiment and learn. Every day was fun. Even if we got rained on, it was fun because we were out climbing. That was kind of my young mindset. And, you get older and, the conditions aren't right and you get, pissy and moany, but, if you're out climbing, it's still a pretty good day, even if the conditions aren't ideal. So again, all those things that go along with that beginner's mindset, the willingness to try new things, go to new areas. Some experienced climbers fall into ruts of going to the same boulders or the same cliff or the same gym all the time. And then they wonder why they lose motivation or plateau. And, each area has its own way about it, its own language of climbing. And when you get good at that language, you stop growing. You need to go to other areas and learn the different languages, the different, nouns and verbs of climbing cracks and roofs and slippery rock and coarse rock and different angles of rock. And the same thing indoors, traveling to different gyms and being exposed to different route setters and different styles of indoor climbing, which can vary from one gym to another, based on the wall configurations and such. And also, a beginner climber is very willing to learn new things. And oftentimes when we become experienced and get a little cocky and think we're pretty good, then you kind of can convince yourself you know it all, and you never know it all. If you talk to Adamandra, the world's best climber, you would discover he's a very curious person and always interested in learning something new and trying to look at his own climbing and see what he can do better, or what he has to unlearn, maybe a bad movement habit, or maybe a bad training habit that needs to be broken away from and removed, or a bad diet habit. There's a lot of things in our life that have kind of an invisible influence on our climbing, the things that take up our time and consume our energy outside of climbing, and maybe take us away from climbing, or prevent us from training optimally or as often as we should. And it's not always about training more, it's about training optimally, right? More is not necessarily better. That's how a lot of climbers get injured. And you need rest days, and you need quality nutrition. There's a lot of things that go together. So again, that it's a complex puzzle that you can spend years or decades solving the puzzle. And as long as you recognize you don't know it all, and you keep that beginner's mindset, that makes you able to glean new distinctions and pick up on new ideas, or discover or observe a better way to do a move or a better way to move on the rock. When you think you know it all, when you think you are hot stuff, your learning ends. And so it is important to remain curious and remain humble. I think that's a big one, when you think you know it all, that's when learning ends. And so a lot of climbers, I think maybe 3, 4, 5 years in, they've gone through that rapid period of improvement that we all go through. When you go from day 0, not being a climber, to day 1, to month 1, to year 1, you improve rapidly because you're learning all these skills and you're getting stronger every single week. And And then at some point, 3, 4, 5 years in, you think, oh, I'm climbing pretty hard. I know all this stuff. I don't need a coach. I don't need to read books or, study or, work on my technique. I can just go climbing and that's going to make me better. And when you get kind of that cockiness that you know it all, that is when you will plateau. And so if any of this sounds familiar, and I've been through that at various points in my life, probably in my 20s, when I was, one of the better climbers in the Eastern United States, putting up hard first ascents, kind of feeling like I knew it all. And then, I kind of woke up at some point and said, man, there's a whole world to learn about training for climbing. And I started down this journey that I'm still on, seeking to discover new techniques, new training strategies, leverage the latest research and science to help me train smarter, eat better, recover faster, all of those things. And that's what I've been doing. That's my mission for like more than 30 years now as a coach and as a climber, and trying to share that stuff with you in all of my, podcasts and books and here on the Training Cafe. So kind of, I guess, wrapping things up, the biggest enemy of your future gains as a climber are, an arrogance, thinking that you know it all, that you can't learn anything else, and kind of becoming indifferent or ignoring people who try to share with you new ideas, or coaches that try to help steer you maybe in a better way of training or doing something. And once you get stuck on your way of doing things, it's hard to break free sometimes without a slap in the face, from a coach or a climbing partner, because we do become comfortable in our ways of training. And, that's something you have to ask yourself. Do you go to the gym and kind of do the same thing every time? Go through the same sequence, do the same exercises, do the same campusing, spend the same amount of time on the system wall. If you're doing the same thing over and over this year that you did last year, you're not training ideally, I guarantee you. In fact, I would say that, for all of us, myself included, the best training program for you right now is one that you're not doing. So you should ask yourself what needs to be changed in what you're doing now to train in a more effective way for the future. And it's not always about doing more of something. That's something that enthusiastic climbers, people into training, they're always adding new stuff to their training program, and the workouts get longer and longer and more fatiguing. And we confuse fatigue with effective training. Just because you're getting highly fatigued doesn't mean you had a good workout. Fatigue is part of, climbing and training, obviously, but you could go to a CrossFit gym and go through a 2-hour CrossFit workout and walk out totally fatigued. And that would not be an effective training for climbing workout. Or you could go run 10 miles and get home and be extremely fatigued, but that would not mean that was a good climbing workout. And same thing, going to the climbing gym, just because you walk home destroyed doesn't necessarily mean it was an effective workout. Maybe it was, but maybe there were some things that you shouldn't have done that had no training value that just created fatigue. Or maybe you did too much of everything at the gym, and the signaling kind of was interfering with each other. As I've often talked about, the concept of energy system training is a very useful tool to help you focus workouts on one physiological, one bioenergetic system, and signal it to improve, and to split up workouts by energy systems. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but hopefully you get the idea that you just can't go to the gym and climb and train without any organization or system at work. And doing so might make you really tired and might make you think you had a great workout, but it is not necessarily a great workout. And it might get you injured if that's your MO all the time, to destroy yourself at the gym. So enough said. Let's move on to some of your questions here. And I do need to wrap this one up a little early. I got a super busy day. So let me have a sip of coffee here. And like the Fizzy Vantage coffee mug. Okay, let's answer some viewer questions, and we'll wrap this thing up in maybe 10 or 15 minutes. Last time you spoke about your strength training day. Do you boulder before or after your other exercises? What does a limit session look like for you? Okay, well, there's a couple of depends there on that. Of course, I do on a max strength or a limit day, I do a very slow progressive warm up that for me takes 30 to 40 minutes to get, the blood flowing, to get, the joints and tendons lubricated and everything moving. And then to finally, the last thing in that sequence is to get your fast twitch fibers turned on, to get recruitment turned on, to get the rate of force development up. And so, that easy warm up ends with a few exercises that really look like and are part of your strength and power training. A few sets of weighted pull-ups, a few weighted fingerboard hangs, a few ladders on the campus board. Those are the things that I end my warm-up with to get me totally warmed up and turned on. So I've already done a little bit of my max strength, max power training, but I haven't created much fatigue. So at that point, 45 minutes into my workout, fully turned on, fully warmed up, then I would do my limit bouldering. Whether you're doing it on a bouldering wall or whether you're doing it on a system wall, or maybe you're tying into a rope and doing some lead climbing. So I do that next. Because if you're going to really try to push your limits on, system wall or try to do a few boulders near your limit, you want to be fully warmed up but not fatigued. And so that's what I just described. So I would do that next. So, I talked about, for me, a 30 to 40 minute warm up, and then another 40 minutes, maybe for you, it's an hour of limit bouldering with lots of rest between attempts, and then circle back to kind of complete your weighted hangboard, your weighted pull-ups, your campus training, kind of towards the end of your session. Now, again, if you do a really long 2-3 hours of limit bouldering, you're not going to have anything left in the tank to do effective hangboarding or effective campusing. That's what I'm talking about. You could do it, but you would be really fatigued. You would just be digging a deeper hole to recover from. You would be tempting injury. So if you're going to do limit bouldering and some serious hangboarding or campusing, you need to, limit yourself in both of those and not do, a supersized amount of either of them. If you were going to do a supersized amount of hangboarding, let's say, or of campusing or both, you would do the warm up and then just go right into that and, make your workout mostly about hangboarding and campusing, or whatever training you have planned for that day. And then if you were going to do a little kind of cool down climbing at the end, sub-maximal, you could do that. But you're not going to be able to do limit bouldering after doing, a pretty full-sized hangboard training protocol. So that is where often less is more when it comes to those types of limit workouts. You spend most of those workouts resting, because your weighted hangs or your campus lap or your limit boulder, those are 5 to 10 second efforts. And then you rest for 2, 3, 4 minutes. So you're spending most of those workouts resting, not training. But that is how you do proper max strength, max power, limit kind of workouts. Okay, is there a big difference between consuming supercharged collagen on an empty stomach or after a reasonable breakfast? Yes, there is a big difference in terms of the rate at which the amino acids spike into your bloodstream. So there's the same nutritional value, obviously, either way, because the amino acids from the supercharged collagen will get into your system and become available, for collagen synthesis throughout your body. That's good. On a rest day, that would be fine. Now, if you want to make the most of it, and what I've promoted is the research that has been pretty well documented, that if you consume the hydrolyzed collagen 30 to 60 minutes before you do targeted loading. So with climbers, the targeted loading is your fingers, your arms, your shoulders, those climbing tendons and muscles. And if you really want to direct the nutrients, those collagen-specific amino acids, the glycine, the proline, the hydroxyproline, that are so rich and abundant in this product, and they're not rich and abundant in, say, whey protein or in most foods. This is unique. This has the highest concentration of those three critical amino acids of any food on the planet. So if you consume this on an empty stomach, 30 to 60 minutes later, you have this, it's gone through your digestive system. The individual amino acids are in your bloodstream and they're spiking at about 1 hour. And so by doing it on an empty stomach, it gets through your digestive system and into your bloodstream very rapidly. Whereas if you consumed it with food, like with your breakfast, then there's all those other foods in your belly along with it, and it's a much slower release, which is still beneficial, throughout your body. But in terms of if you want to load your tendons when you have that spike of those collagen-specific amino acids flowing through your system, you would want to consume it on an empty stomach and then go do your hangboarding or go do your bouldering or your climbing, so that you're doing some pretty, significant loading on those connective tissues while you have that spike in your bloodstream at around 1 hour. And that is what has been shown in the lab to be beneficial, because when you load your tendons, there's fluid moving in and out of them, synovial fluid moving in and out of them, that it has an increase in those amino acids when they're spiking through your system. And so whatever connective tissues and muscles you are loading during that spike will preferentially absorb them. Muscles get the nutrients through blood flow, but tendons and ligaments are virtually avascular, and they get it through that fluid flow from loading. So if you consume this and do no loading, well, then it circulates through your system, but is getting actually utilized more by muscles than by connective tissues to reassemble and build proteins throughout your body. So it's all about what is your goal. If your goal is to direct them to a body part, then consuming it on an empty stomach and then loading about 1 hour after you've consumed it, that is the proven protocol. Okay, on we go. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. He says, I noticed that after reaching a no hands rest, my arms started feeling good after a little time, but as I started to climb again, the pump was back almost immediately. Yeah, and that's a common thing that especially rock climbers observe, is that a very dynamic in nature of the pump. And, there's a number of things going on. Of course, there's this vasodilation that allows enhanced blood flow into the working muscles, your forearm muscles. And when you're climbing at 70, 80, 90% of your max intensity, it becomes very anaerobic. You start to occlude blood flow when you're gripping hard. And when you're going anaerobic, you're creating lactate and you're creating hydrogen ions as byproducts of that anaerobic metabolism of glucose, of glycogen in your muscles. And so those byproducts can't get out of your muscles and recirculate, and you can't get recovery started without blood flow. And so when you get to a rest and the blood flow resumes, that's good. It starts the recovery process. But as soon as you start climbing again, you go, if you're going back into some pretty hard climbing, you go anaerobic very quickly. and you occlude blood flow. So you stop the recovery process and kind of pick up where you left off in terms of fatiguing the muscles, in terms of the types of fatigue that come about when you are going anaerobic on a very hard sequence. And so unless you were able to rest for like 20 minutes and get kind of complete recovery, if you have a shorter rest, which is what is usually the case when you're on a route, you shake out for just a minute or two and you think you got a lot back, but you don't get much back in a minute or two. You get back some creatine phosphate stores, enough for a few more moves, but you don't recover a lot in terms of that anaerobic system, in terms of the hydrogen ions on lactate. You need a longer rest, 10 to 20 minutes to recover significantly. So yeah, that is part of climbing, and the art of resting, how to know how long to rest at any given rest position is something that really comes with experience, and there's just no other way around it. What would be your biggest tips on improving on the moon board, currently stuck at the V8 benchmarks? Well, I don't think you can just moon board or tension board or kilter board your way to the next grade. At some point, you need to develop some physiological traits. It might be stronger shoulders and shoulder stabilizers. It could be stronger wrist stabilizers. It could be stronger finger flexors. The moon board is not the best way to train finger strength. A hangboard is. And so if you're one of these climbers, and there are a lot of them that I talk to and hear from, that the system walls have become their main way of training. And if that's you, you're not training optimally. Because again, when you're on a system wall or on a climbing wall, every handhold you grab is different. One's a pinch, one's a crimp, one's a sloper, one's a pocket. And climbing up a wall with every grip being different is not how you train maximum grip strength. You train maximum grip strength by taking a grip position and doing near maximum intensity loading for 7 to 10 seconds and doing it repeatedly. So doing 3 to 6, half crimp hangs in a row with weight, doing some pocket hangs in a row, doing some pinches. I prefer doing them standing up, but doing some pinches, multiple pinches, one after another. That's how you get stronger. And so you never get that on a system wall. Everything is different and novel. And so there's a lot of benefits to system walling, but there are a lot of limitations as well. And so those limitations are, it's not the best way to train maximum grip strength. It's not the best way to train shoulder strength. You need to isolate with external rotation and doing various exercises, Y's and T's and I's with a sling trainer, let's say. Think about your training needs to be just more than one thing. And so hitting the plateau there, you need to introduce some new things to your training program, and that don't involve the moon board, that involve things that are going to strengthen up your weaker body parts. And this is a good opportunity to engage a coach or a climber who knows a lot more than you on this. If someone's just telling you need to moon board more, don't listen to them. Okay, system walling is good to a point, but it's only one piece of an effective training program. Okay, do you recommend collagen in the morning during climbing trips? Yeah, absolutely. If you can take it with you, I mean, that's one reason we have it in these soft, Ziploc bags, is it packs very easily to take on climbing trips. I mean, if you're someone who's really hard on your connective tissues, whether it's training, climbing, or maybe just an older person that has achy joints, there's a benefit to taking it every morning, whether you're at home training, at home resting, on a climbing trip training, or on a climbing trip resting. It's an investment, obviously, because it's not free. It's like buying whey protein to consume after your workout, or buying food or beer or anything else. It's a consumable product, and you need to invest in it. And it's a matter of determining whether it's valuable to you and helpful. And many climbers, of course, believe it is. Okay, any tips for maintaining balance between left and right? Yeah, that's something that I've never achieved after all these years. I'm right hand dominant, and so I can, I'm stronger in terms of one arm pull-ups and in terms of my crimp strength. And so we all have this natural imbalance. It's good to try to balance things out and to try to train in ways where you can keep elevating, bilaterally, but it's really tough. It's a rare climber, I think, that gets total balance there. Okay, and I really appreciate that kind feedback, but thank you very much. Yes, it is good to get feedback from the readers of my books and podcast listeners. Those of you who have left, let's say, reviews on iTunes from listening to my podcast, or leave comments or email me. I do appreciate that feedback. I learn from each of you, and I learn from the feedback. So I take to heart what I started off this Training Cafe talking about, is remaining curious. I'm on a lifelong mission to learn as much as I can about climbing performance, and actually human performance, because for me it goes beyond just climbing, but observing what makes people effective in all walks of life. And it's something hopefully that you think about as well. A lot of what we do in climbing, the way we challenge our fears, and the way we set goals and develop systems to reach those goals, we can use that same thought process to achieve success outside of climbing, in our careers and in anything that you choose to pursue. And that's a pretty cool thing, how life, how our climbing life, gives us many lessons that are transferable into our everyday life. Okay, next question. Thoughts on useful floor core exercises as opposed to bar core, like front levers? Yeah, and I think they are equally important. Let's put it that way. And this is where, and I've shared this before, this is where I think I went wrong for many years in my own personal training. Long time ago, when I was in high school, when I was a teenager, I was on the gymnastics team in high school because I was getting into climbing. And back then my idol was John Gill, the legendary boulderer, who was doing like V9 moves in 1959. He was, one of the first people to train for climbing. I call him the father of training for climbing. People call me that, but I think really it's John Gill that was, because he's been doing it, talking about it a lot longer than I have, and he inspired me. So I joined the gymnastics team because there were no climbing gyms. So that seemed like a pretty good way to get strong for climbing. And in gymnastics, you do a lot of this type of front levers and iron crosses. And, I developed the strength to do all of those things. And then I kind of carried it into my adult life as a climber. Front levers have been something I've always done a couple days a week as part of my core training. And for many years, because I was strong enough to do those gymnastics tricks, I thought my core was strong enough, and boy, was I wrong, because I was really overlooking the posterior chain, and just the fact that the core is more than, this, front lever strength and what you see in the mirror, your six-pack abs. It's a lot more than that. The core is, everything, shoulders to hips, the whole way around. So you got to think three-dimensionally, and that means you need to train three-dimensionally. And so, being on a bar facing the ceiling and doing, leg raises and knee lifts and front levers, that's, mostly anterior core, in front of you. But you get on the ground, and you go through various plank progressions and bridges and, doing rollouts, or you pick up some heavy weights like deadlifting, which I started to do about a decade ago with my sons, to do some deadlifting, not large amounts, not like a bodybuilder, but like a power lifter, a warm-up set, and then a few pretty heavy sets of just 3 to 5 reps. And that will make you strong without bulking up, because no matter what anybody tells you, you don't want to bulk up from, the waist down, not if you want to climb hard, steep, long routes. And so you got to lift in just the right way. But yeah, doing a variety of things is very useful. And I, here in recent years, really enjoy doing the floor exercises, the planking. I now do them usually with a 15 or 20 pound weight belt to help take it, the intensity to a higher level as I get better at doing those types of things. So yes, everything you mentioned is worthwhile. Plus, others even. I think variety is good when it comes to core training. And a final question here: is Supercharged Collagen distributed in Europe? No, not yet. We're working on that. We do have some European climbers who buy it off our website, though it's an expensive thing to ship across the ocean, and we've had some customs issues getting into a few European countries. But we're trying to resolve that matter, and hopefully I'll have some good news from you soon. Okay, one more question, then I'm going to wrap it up here. Any thoughts on density hangs? Any success and improvements, but plateaued after switching to max hangs to recruitment? Okay, well, first of all, density hangs, that's connective tissue training where you're holding isometric exercises. You could do a reverse wrist curl that is isometric contraction. You could do, hold a halfway pull-up position. You could do isometric training of any body part, really. And if you load the connective tissues in an isometric, or some therapists prefer eccentric, but it just needs to be a long, sustained contraction. That allows the collagen fibrils that comprise your tendons to slide a little bit. And that breaks cross-links and actually gives a really good signal to the tenocytes to extrude collagen and how to align the collagen. And the bottom line is those types of isometric hangs that some people call density hangs are good for making higher quality connective tissues, hence the density idea. Because when you get connective tissue injuries, it's because of disorganization, tearing, or the fibers being laid down haphazardly, and it's not this stiff, quality, dense collagen that you would like to have. And so now that is, you want to think when you're doing those density hangs or those isometric training that you are doing more training of the connective tissues than the muscles. It's not the best way to train your muscles year round. It's good as a therapeutic for connective tissues, especially if you are displaying symptoms, tendon pain and such, or you're going through rehab of a pulley injury or tendinosis or something like that. Then you should be thinking mainly about connective tissue training and doing those isometrics, this type of density hangs, as some climbing coaches call it. But in terms of gain training, getting stronger, taking your grip strength or rate of force development to the next level, you won't do that by just doing isometric hangs. Rate of force development you get from plyometric type training, like on a campus board. And doing brief maximal hangs or lifts of just a few seconds or a few reps is how you train fast twitch fiber to get stronger. And again, doing a 30-second isometric hang isn't the best way to do that. So again, it's important for athletes to understand what is the value of a given exercise and protocol. There's distinctly different protocols for training muscles than training tendons, just as there's distinctly different training protocols for training maximum strength versus anaerobic endurance versus aerobic endurance. They all have different methods, and so that is the reason I am a big fan of educating athletes, educating climbers of some of the science, so they understand the reason behind what they're doing. If you don't understand the reasons, it gets a lot easier to start mixing up all these training methods and doing them all in one workout. You do density hangs and then you do campus training. Well, they are two totally different exercises that should not be done in the same workout. They actually have different stimulus on connective tissues. campus training, plyometric training signals connective tissues to get stiffer, whereas density hangs and isometrics signal connective tissues to get more compliant. Two totally different things. If you're doing them in the same workout, you're kind of wasting your time. And I could go down a rabbit hole here of a lot of things that climbers do wrong in the name of training, or athletes of all kinds. And so that is where knowing the science can really help you out. So hopefully that made sense there. Coach Hörst can go off on these tangents and go down a rabbit hole, but hopefully I get it right back where I was. Well, folks, I think I'm going to wrap this one up here at about 45 minutes. I appreciate all the kind thoughts. I see there Steve Bond just said he read my first book, Flash Training, in 1994. That was the book that started it all. I look at it now and it's so basic and elementary, but that was almost 30 years ago that I wrote that book. I started writing it like in 1991. So, the material is quite dated. That book is a collector's item, but I don't think it would be, shouldn't be your choice of a reference guide right now. But hopefully you've bought a few of the newer books, like the 3rd edition of Training for Climbing, which is cutting edge. It's got Megos on the cover, and that is, got, the latest things like energy system training in it. I have begun thinking about what needs revised in that 3rd edition to maybe justify upgrading and updating into a 4th edition, but I think that's still another year or two away. I got enough work on my plate right now. Okay, that said, I'm going to sign off here once and for all. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate you all taking the time to join me here at the cafe and sip some coffee. And let's do it again in 2 weeks. I'll be in Germany, so hopefully I can pull off a streaming video in Germany. If I don't show up, you'll know why. So see you then. Auf Wiedersehen.